fantasy, caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
Woo-wee, boy, howdy. Welcome to another episode of Big Country's Comic Book Reviews. And today we're going to talk about Moon Knight, Moon Pie Night. I love me some moon pies, don't you? Alright, so that's about all I can handle of that. So I'm going to start laughing if I have to talk like that the rest of the time. But boy, howdy. What do we got here? Oh, a nice little Moon Knight book. It'd be a shame if somebody ruined it. Well, that's kind of what happens here. So, let's get into this. This is issue 190. And they just got a new writer. You may know who it is. You may not know, but just in case you don't know who this is, it's Max Bemis. And if you're wondering, hey, maybe I should go on social media and add him then, because I like his work, you know. Well, I got news for you. If you do that, you're going to have a bad time, because Max Bemis is one of the biggest degenerates I've ever seen on social media. The dude literally tells fans to go eat his butt. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then he goes on this rant today. I caught him trying to attack late night comics. So I immediately retweeted it and said, you know, he's doing nothing wrong. He's talking about a illegal immigration phone number. Like if you know that somebody that's an illegal immigrant, here's a phone number, blah blah, for, you know, Border Patrol. That's not against the law. So basically, when that backfired on him, then he said, well, you just didn't get the joke. And I was like, well, like 50 people saw this and got upset about it because you're being stupid. So maybe it's just you. You know, maybe you're acting out. But my thing is, you don't do that. You don't do that. You don't attack the fans, especially if you just started writing a book. Like, you're like 2 or 3 issues in, dude. Settle down. It's so funny how quick they are to get in that mentality once they get into these comic groups and start acting out. He gets over here to Marvel, and I don't think he realizes it, but they've got different management now with C.B. Cebulski there, and he's biding his time before he's out. I think what happened is he got those numbers back on that Moon Knight from last month, and somebody's a little upset because they ain't very good. But so let's get into this book. Enough talking about that idiot. He's probably going to be off this book soon anyway. This is issue 190. Now what's going on right now is you have Raw basically is making a plan to get back at Moon Knight because they're opposites. You have Raw, and then you have his son, which is that long name that I can't pronounce, which is what Moon Knight draws his power from, that spirit. And it's Egyptian folklore. And so now we're Crazy Runs in the Family Part 3. Well, as we get into this, let's just check this out. So we basically start out here, and they're trying to tell you the history of Ra and what's his name? Khonshu? I guess we'll just say Khonshu. Well, they're trying to tell you that over the time, you know, they've always fought, and Khonshu always embarrasses Ra. He always ends up beating him and embarrassing him. And the main thing is, the dialogue is so bad. Oh my gosh. Let's just read this here. It says, and so it has begun since the days the gods themselves walked earth, Ra and Khonshu, vengeful father and errant son, warring for the very soul of the world, reborn again and again throughout early avatars. And in every instance, Ra is humbled, shamed. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not very bad. Okay, here's the deal. The dialogue boxes are fine. It's almost like a different person wrote those. And I'm thinking that's what it is. But when you get to the dialogue bubbles, we get to the first box, and he says, now this is Roman times now. It says, like that, don't you, you patrician? And then he's like, patrician F, question mark. So he's talking about the patriarchy right off the bat. So then we get to the next box here, and they're fighting like medieval times, grant you. And Ra's on the ground there, and he says, "Ha, worst night ever." And then Ra's like, "Hate you." Oh my God. So then we get to the next scene, and there's not even any dialogue. He's just blowing the smoke off his gun, which is not that cheesy. It's a Western time. And then we get to the next scene where he's basically it's like World War II or something, and you have these looks like Hydra agents, and he's like shooting him. So, and then we cut back to more dialogue here. Now we get Ra, and we get this new villain that has befriended him. I don't know this guy right here. Here's where we get the problem here. Bemis does not know how to write people. And I'm not just saying this because he blew up on Twitter today. He writes, now this guy that's talking, he's talking about what he did. He said he ruled an entire African nation. Men bowed down to him. He said now he has been, he's down to selling crack. That's what he does. But this is the way he says it. He says, now this is a guy that ruled an African nation and is now a crack dealer. And I'm talking about he is straight out of Africa. Tough guy, don't mess with him. He says, look, many of you have seen me at my best, and you know that's not where I'm at. I once ruled an entire African nation. Men really bowed before me. I deal crack now. I move a lot of product, but yeah, I deal crack, and I eat leftovers. Does that sound like an African warlord to you? Because it don't to me. But anyway, let's keep going. He says, you almost wonder why I haven't acted on the piece of information I just doled out to you. Moon Knight's only real weakness, and that's an answer you can't learn until a man literally slices your face off. Mark Spector. And so they go on and on about this, and he says, I wouldn't come near Moon Knight with a 10-foot pole at this point, but with Sun King's determination and power, now I'm willing to take the risk. It's time to utilize the ace that's been up my sleeve for years. We're going to... Does any of that sound like an African warlord to you? I'm not just saying like he has to talk stupid or anything. I mean, he would talk in that... I mean, he's talking like Bemis. He's talking like a little geriatric kid, just an idiot. And so then they all cheer because, you know, they're all with the sun god now because they're unified, you know, against this common enemy, which is the Moon Knight. He's basically been beating the crap out of everybody. So then we go to this point to where Moon Knight is fighting with another one of his, or Mark Spector's fighting with another one of his personalities. And then the third personality is sitting there with the God Spirit just watching. So as he's pounding the guy in the head, they're going through different dream phases, which is kind of neat. And he says, the nature of this arrangement calls for transparency, Jake. And Jake says, kid, you sliced me off your personality and sent me to live among freaks, addicts, and criminals. There are things you don't want to know. He says, I don't know how. He says, I know how to strip and dress a human body, Spectre. These things take their toll. And so they go on and on about that. And he calls him an angsty teenager. And then we get this semi-funny scene here where he's in, it turns out while he's having this mental fight, he's meditating in a park in New York. And this old lady comes by with her dog, and all of a sudden he just yells out, I'm not a douche. Yes, you are. Stop whacking me. And then she runs off, you know, upset and scared. And so basically they keep hitting each other. And then at this point he says, look, Stephen. Look, Stephen is a wealthy benefactor. Khonshu is our connection to the bigger picture. You're the voice of reason, and I deal in the grimy leftovers. You built us this way. Like I said, you can chill. We got this. Please don't make me put you to sleep. So then they find common ground. They start talking, and basically they come to an understanding, you know, a sick understanding, because there's something wrong when he's got multiple personalities. And so then at that point, we get back to Ra, which is basically walking door to door, talking to people. And this lady answers the door, and he says, hey, and for some reason he already knows her name, which I would immediately thought was kind of strange. He says, I hate to impose, but door-to-door looking people in the eye seems to have had the best results. I'm taking donations for a joint disaster relief fund. I'm sure you're aware. And she goes, oh, yeah. And so basically she walks inside to get her money. And once inside, she continues talking about, all the, what she's wanting to do. And she says, it seems like the end of days these past few months, terrible. Still, for the amount I get out of the neighborhood, things could be totally peachy out there. I wouldn't know. She says, I'm not the world traveler I once was. And he says, oh, a fan of suburban life, huh? So then he immediately cuts his eyes over and notices something. And he says, in Ra's name, it can't be. And so he's still in shock, and she goes, what? I'm sorry, what? And then he says, now. So then the whole team just calmly walks inside. I didn't really understand why he said now. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. He could have said, she's the one. That would have made more sense to me, but okay. I thought for a second he was going to yell, no! Like that Nurkish comic book. But anyway, so the dude walks in and he's like, Marlene, such an inhospitable welcome for such an old friend. It's been two. And he says, Bushman, cease your monologue, which, okay, whatever. So then he shows the picture to the warlord guy, which is now a drug lord, I guess. And he's like, well, I'll be. And she says, don't move an inch. If you lay a finger, and he says, what are you going to do? Call the cops? He says, maybe you'd like to solicit some assistance from your knight in shining armor. And so then we find out, uh-oh, she's got a connection to Moon Knight. Which, she's an old girlfriend, so now they figured it out. So then, as Moon Knight's fighting some more criminals here, from very generic criminals with very generic weapons. They look like they bought them at Walmart. He's having a talk with the Khonshu guy, and so then his phone rings, and when he picks up his phone, we get more Bemis humor here, and the screen just says, "Do not pick up psychopath, let it go," or "Do not pick up psychopath, let it go." And so obviously it's her. And he says, Khonshu, help me, because it's supposed to be funny. He says, oh, Marlene, I can't believe you're calling. She says, hey, Mark, it's been a while. And he says, years, actually. He says, everything all right? She said, I've missed you. That's actually why I'm calling. We were special, incredibly special. I know we're not that anymore, but I feel like I'm living a lie, just cutting you out of my life to save my skin. And then we see that Ra is right behind her, holding on to her, and says, however, I would totally understand if you never want to see me again. And so she tries to give him information. She said, and he says, don't even think about it. So then, I didn't know this, but he gets into his ship and flies off. I didn't know Moon Knight had a jet. I thought he was like low, like street level, kind of like a poor Batman. But he has his own spaceship or his own ship that looks like a moon. That's expensive. Custom ships are expensive. I know. But anyway. So then we get a flashback where he's talking to her back when they were dating. So that's supposed to let us in on the fact that they used to be dating. And it's very weird because they get to talking about, very terrible things in his life. And she's very casual about it. So it makes you wonder what happened to her. But he says, I had to, kill him with a grenade. And she said, oh, your own brother? He said, my own brother. She said, geez, was that before the illegal boxing matches? He said, right. She said, but after he killed your girlfriend. He said, yeah, that is kind of it's hard to keep track of, clearly. He says, I've seen some stuff. And so they go on and on about this, and he says, I don't usually talk to people. For some reason, I'm opening up to you. You must have some kind of dark magic. And she says, you're changing the subject. She said, your girlfriend, you lost her. And he said, yeah, I did. She said, that's a terrible thing. I'm really sorry. And he says, I'm not unfamiliar with terrible. And she said, if this is the most you've talked about all this, it sounds to me like you've been in need of a friend. He said, friends go away. Friends get hurt. I don't make a habit of keeping them. And she said, well, good thing I'm not just your friend, Mark. And so then we get the establishment of the, relationships and things of that nature. And then, now here's Spectre. And he shows up, and I feel really bad for the dude because he's in a full suit. Like he's in a suit with flowers. And you know, clearly the guy's got some stuff wrong with him, obviously. And then at the same time, he got his hopes up. What really gets on my nerves is the drawing style, because he keeps drawing the people with really short arms for their body, which kind of gets on my nerves a little bit. But anyway, she says, "Mark, come in." He says, "Oh, you look great," you know. So they exchange all that, and then he notices Raw standing there, and you would think they would kind of get like a feeling back and forth. I don't know, like a Highlander moment or something, you know, since they know each other. I dropped my drink cap, but so then they exchange handshakes. Raw is clearly an opposing dude compared to him, and except he looks like a hippie BG Jesus. And so he says, "Have a seat. We need to talk." He says, "If you're asking what I am to Marlene, Mark, I'll be frank. We've been living together for about 2 years now." And he says, "Oh." So clearly we can see what his plan is. He's trying to throw him off. And he says, I must let you know that I know." He says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I know who you are. Marlene was kind enough to fill me in." So, then I'm getting mad when I read that. He says, "You're the Moon Knight, the face of Khonshu, shepherd of the lost and panic-stricken." And he says, "Marlene is a precious diamond, Mark." "Yeah, I'm aware of that, buddy." He says, "I'm aware that when you were in her life, she was constantly at the mercy of men who would destroy anything you love just to get you an unpleasant night's sleep. As you know, all the bad people that was always trying to get her." He says, "And as a man who shared her life in her bed for many seasons," and he's like, "nauseous." And that was some SJW not so funny humor there. He says, "I want you to make sure that you've thought this out very carefully." And so Moon Knight's already grabbed his knife and he's already gripping it so tight it's cutting him. He says, "I'm not the only one to have tasted the bliss Marlene has at her disposal." Oh, you're dead now, dude. Says, "If you want to know what she's really been up to while you've been apart, you could ask her for yourself, or perhaps you can ask our mutual friend, Jake Lockley." Oh, he says, "Lockley? What is he talking about?" And then that's when the voice says, "Don't think about it, Mark. Turn back now." And you see Mark, and he is this huge creature now in his mind, and he says, "Jake, what have you done?" I mean, he is furious. And so then at that point, I just kind of lose all respect for Marlene at this point. She apparently was sought out by Jake, which was his other personality, and pretty much slept with him just to be able to be with Mark in a way of thinking, and then it didn't turn out good because he happens to be a psychopath. So then, after all that happened, then the bad guys bring in the after effects of that. The little daughter. And then she says, "Uncle Jake, what are you doing here?" And then we see the picture of Jake, and I was like, oh no, oh gosh. So then she says, "I couldn't raise our daughter alone." And so, you know, at the same time, I think Raw is using her to say these things, but at the same time, these emotions are coming up, you know, and she's upset about it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, because that's one of my biggest things. I think if somebody did that to me with somebody that I loved, tricked them like that, and got to me in that way, the ultimate betrayal, I'd hate to think what I would do to that person. I really hate to think what I would do. But oh man, that just really, not only does it make me not like Jake even more, but it makes me not like Marlene, because now I'm just like, ugh, whatever, Marlene, get out of here. But so now we've got this dynamic. But here's something more I want to talk about. This shows that Bemis does not know what he's doing, because the story is good. The storyline is good. The execution, not so good. So it leads me to believe he's not writing these things. Because why would you write this good story and put this terrible dialogue in there? That's one of two things. Either you're trying to shoehorn that stuff in there because you think it's funny, or somebody else is giving you the stories and you're writing it in your own way, which may be the way that they're doing it. And at that point, I'm just like, you're a placeholder. You come in and write these books and put your stupid jokes like, ha, worst night ever, hate you. And then you just sully Moon Knight. I mean, this could be a really good story, and then it's just, ugh. And then you go on Twitter and act like an idiot. And by the way, he blocked me on Twitter today. I've never even talked to him. All I did was screen capture the stupid things that he said and put them on there, and I guess he just couldn't handle it. But my thing is, don't go after the fans. That's what you don't do. And you especially don't do this crap here where you shoehorn these stupid dialogues in here. Why are you making the African warlord sound like a suburban housewife? I mean, what the heck? I deal crack and I eat leftovers. I mean, gosh, it's just awful. I really don't see this going much further. I think he's probably going to be out after 10 or so issues. They're just going to move, maybe 6 issues. I don't know. He's sullied himself on Twitter so much now. I don't think CB's going to put up with that. But all right, guys, I just want to talk a little bit about that. I hope you liked the intro that I did. I just wanted to have a little fun with it. But we'll talk to you later, boys. We're just going to get on down here and start us a little bonfire. We're going to have us a little shindig. So I'll talk to you later. Yeehaw! Bye. Underground Geek out.
I wish I knew you when I was young.